Greetings, everyone. My name is Dr. Ellen Stein, and I am excited to be here with my colleagues who will introduce themselves in a moment, presenting for you Bridging the Career Gap for New Transfer Students Transitioning from a 2-year to a 4-year college at what I assume is the first virtual National Career Development Association conference. So I'd like to ask my colleagues to introduce themselves, and then I'll say a little bit more. Go ahead, please. Sandy.
Sure. My name is Sandy Cooprat, and I am an Associate Director at the Starr Career Development Center at Baruch College, which is in New York City. And as part of the Bridge to Baruch program, I kind of oversaw the program itself, as well as handled a lot of the logistics and the organizing and the planning and things like that. Adia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Adia Tucker. I'm an Assistant Director at the Starr Career Development Center, also a licensed mental health counselor. Was also involved in the development of Bridge to Baruch and have been co-managing its administration.
Great, thank you. And I did not mention I'm the director of the Starr Career Development Center. I was involved in the initial planning of the program, but my colleagues here have been absolutely doing a phenomenal job of running the program in the ins and outs. Next slide, Sandy. So we wanted to get started by telling you a little bit about who we are in terms of Baruch College and how we fit into the CUNY system so you can get a better understanding of putting our program into context. So at the Starr Career Development Center, we are a small but mighty office. We have 10 full-time staff members who service 15,000 undergraduate students. Our school is made up of largely three schools within one college. We have the School of Business, our School of Arts and Sciences, and our School of Public Affairs. And our largest school is the School of Business. In terms of the students who come to Baruch, I think this is really important because this drives all the services that we offer. Most of our students are first generation college going. 65% of the students who actually fill out our FAFSA form have a combined family income that's below the poverty line. So this affects how we think about training for them and how important it is to help them with their career development, hoping that we can help propel them into more opportunities that will not only help themselves, but also their families. Our college is also known for diversity. We have over 110 different languages that are spoken at Baruch, and students come from 160 different countries. So this is probably also one of our best assets. For me personally, it's the whole reason I'm at Baruch. We really celebrate our students' diversity and making sure that the students who come, we want to make sure that we're giving them the tools they need to be successful, not only while at Baruch, but also beyond. And we have been very fortunate that collectively between the education the students get, the career services that they get, the extracurriculars that they get, Baruch has been able to have a reputation for being an engine of social mobility. In fact, we've been named #1 in the country for several years in a row for our social mobility. Go ahead, Sandy. So in terms of how we fit in to a larger system, it's important to recognize that Baruch is one of 25 campuses that make up the City University of New York system. And this system has 11 senior colleges. And they each have varying areas of sort of expertise. I know Baruch, while we're not just a business school, our largest population is in business, followed by our arts and sciences, then public affairs. We have 7 community colleges, and I think what's really important to know about that is there's a pretty direct pipeline from the students who go to the New York City schools for high school, then come into the community colleges, and there is a very strong track record of transferring directly into the senior colleges. And that played into a lot of our decision making around having this program. And CUNY is also consists of these other programs as well. We have 7 graduate, honors, and/or professional schools within the CUNY system. So as you can see, altogether, we service over 220,000 students within the CUNY system. And the CUNY system as a whole, a couple years back, offered opportunities to encourage career services and faculty to put our heads together and think about what we can do to create more success within the CUNY community. And they launched a call for proposals for the CUNY Career Success Initiative. And we applied for that program, and we're very pleased to be able to receive this grant, which allowed us to launch our first ever Bridge to Baruch program. So we are hoping that at the end of this program today, you will come out with the following learning goals. We will talk to you about the unique needs of transfer students, and we hope you'll be able to describe what those are. That based on the things we share with you, you'll be able to think about effectively marketing a program and how you might go about recruiting participants if you are thinking about launching a program or you already have a program like this and you want just some tips. We hope that you will learn from us on how we built on and off campus partnerships that were absolutely critical to the success of this program. We hope that you'll also think about and be able to come out with ideas for weaving core competencies of career readiness into any similar program or other programs that you're doing. And then of course, we hope that you'll see and learn about how we appropriately assess our career outcomes. So we want to give you a little overview of the program and a rationale for why did we start to do it, other than there was a nice incentive. So I've been in career services for a long time, for over 25 years. And in recent years, we started noticing some real demographic changes to our student population. In particular, we started seeing that at Baruch, we saw an upward trend in terms of our students, more and more transfer students coming in. And this became very, very obvious in the last few years. We'll show you some slides shortly on that. And then similarly, we noticed some real different patterns in terms of recruiting. And I think this is relevant, particularly because a large number of our students are in finance, accounting, business, IT, marketing. And so some of those types of industries in particular, instead of what used to be getting students ready at the end of their junior year for that one internship and then getting them ready their senior year for on-campus recruiting, more and more companies started looking at students earlier and earlier in their academic cycle. So this became an issue as we thought about more and more students starting as transfer students, some in their sophomore year, some in their junior year. And if they're looking for students in their sophomore year and some as early as freshman year, then this is putting some of our transfer students at a real disadvantage, and they would be starting behind the 8 ball, so to speak. So that, coupled with the fact that so many of our students are first generation college going, which means that they're learning the ropes, there's the cultural piece of the academic life, there's the social piece, et cetera, the role modeling. And so it's a lot to juggle for someone coming in to switch from a junior college to what is known as a particularly rigorous academic program at Baruch. We have an excellent reputation within our CUNY system and within the New York area. So, and then in addition to that, just being a transfer student, often we heard from students saying that they feel like they were just struggling to connect. You know, they get there and they have to just hurry up and do their academics. So we wanted to provide an opportunity for students to get connected, both socially and in terms of their career, before things got hectic. So as I mentioned before, here is some data from Baruch that shows you the difference between our transfer students and our first year students over time. So it used to be in 2008, we only had 51% as freshmen and 46% as transfers, but over time, by the time we hit 2017, we had close to 59% of students who were transfers. So we really had to pay attention to what could we do to make sure we were removing barriers for our transfers. We also, year after year, we do a lot of research, and in our post-grad outcome studies, we've noticed a trend in terms of who's successful among our graduates. And when we look at who has a job upon graduation year after year, and in this example, we're looking at 2017, there was an absolute pattern about student engagement, that the more a student was engaged, the more times they logged into our career management system, they applied for opportunities and so forth, the more likely they were to have a job upon graduation. So this idea of engagement was something we thought about. How can we ensure that these transfer students who might come in and be so overwhelmed with just the academics, that they understand how valuable and how important engagement is to their future success? So we wanted to also illustrate some of the things that make transfer students particularly unique, both in terms of their needs, but also in terms of some of their strengths. So in terms of their needs, as I mentioned, students are often worried about acclimating, just getting ready academically. I mean, in our campus, we're not a sprawled out campus, but we're a vertical campus. And just finding out where you have to go and elevators and whatnot is a big deal. And the academic part, navigating it, being a little bit more rigorous than maybe they may have experienced at their junior college is often a big deal. On the other hand, one advantage for transfer students is that they have already succeeded academically in one setting. So they are familiar with some study skills and so forth. But on the challenge end and on their needs end, students are sometimes unaware of recruiting timeline. And this was a big one. So they may not realize, and if they knew the timeline maybe in their junior college or whatever other school they came from in the past, they may not realize how competitive it is at a school like Baruch, particularly if they happen to be in certain business fields. On the flip side, in terms of strengths, a lot of our transfer students already come with work experience, and they are familiar with some basic professional norms, which I think is part of why they come in the first place. They know that if they come and complete their degree with us, they're more likely to get the job they want after graduation. Going back to the timeline, I think that transfer students, in terms of their needs, they have to hit the ground running. They have to know that they can't wait till the end of their junior year or the beginning of their senior year to start looking for leadership opportunities, their first internship. And they may not know that. So it's important for us to engage with them early. And I did mention that, you know, again, that is part of the reason in terms of their strengths, why they're coming to Baruch. They are career minded. They are coming because they want to hone in on a specific major or professional opportunity or get great internships and so forth. And another thing that we recognize is that so many of our students are non-traditional, meaning they may not be traditionally 18 to 24 years old. They may have families. They may be taking care of younger siblings. They may be sending money back to home countries. There are so many outside responsibilities that students, and I failed to mention earlier that we are a public university as well, and that's a very important part of our background and our mission. We aim to work with the city population and the students that came from the New York tri-state area. So those are some of the unique needs of our students and their strengths. And the next slide, if we may, talks a little bit about one way we thought about engaging students so that we could help them engage early and have the preparation they need to be competitive. So I'm probably telling you things that you already know about the NACE competencies, the National Association of Colleges and Employers. They survey employers every year and look at what are the competencies you want your students to have upon graduation. So this means that we recognize, and of course I would want to mention that the Career Success Initiative program also was seeking in their call for proposals people who were going to help integrate NACE competencies into the career services, into curriculum, into their campus life. So for us, it was really important to integrate that into this work with our transfer students. And we wanted to make sure that they know and our faculty know a common language around the skills that they're already getting in their classrooms or in our training and so forth. So if you're not familiar, the next slide will give you an overview of what some of these NACE competencies are. Everything from critical thinking and problem solving, communication skills, teamwork, digital technology, leadership, professionalism and work ethic, career management, and of course, global and intercultural fluency. So that's a little bit about our rationale and those factors. So I would be remiss if I didn't also mention who our critical collaborators are. This is not a program that we could have done on our own. It was key for us to connect with a lot of our campus partners and our CUNY partners as well. So we did reach out to our colleagues in some of our feeder schools, if you will, from our community colleges. We absolutely relied on our Office of Enrollment Management to provide us with data about who was enrolling into our program each year, who were the new transfer students. We also collaborated with our transfer student clubs, our transfer student office, and other programs on campus to advertise about this. We wanted to also make sure that we were embedding an employer component And so we had some employers be engaged with us throughout the way to educate students as well. We also feel it's very important that we connect with our faculty. Our faculty spend more time with the students than we do, and they also can give another side of the story. And so we were very fortunate to have a number of faculty members help support our program. And then also, in addition, our development office has helped us raise funds to be able to do programs like this. And in order to distribute the funds and manage our budget, we work with our Office of Special Programs. So that will take us to our program components. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Adia Tucker.
Hi, thank you, Ellen. I'm happy to speak with you about what we conceived for the program, how we broke it down, and why we picked some of the various components that we picked. But first, I'll just take you through our timeline. As Ellen mentioned, we really discovered how critical it was for incoming transfer students to understand the recruiting timelines early. So we knew that we could not wait for the students to get on campus and then start engaging them in activities. So our decision was to do outreach to the students who had already been accepted by Baruch and had indicated a desire to come. So fortunately, Ellen mentioned collaborations earlier. We were able to partner with our Office of Enrollment Management to get that critical list of students around June who had already been accepted to Baruch and had indicated intention to attend the following August, September. So our timeline for the fall semester, and if we didn't make it clear before, I'll make it clear now, we run the program twice per year. So we think about it as a summer and fall component, and then we do it all again with an incoming class of transfer students in the winter and spring. So for the students coming in the fall, we reach out to them in June. So around June, basically whenever it's available, but usually by mid-June, we contact the Office of Enrollment Management to see if they can share the list of incoming transfer students. So that's our task for June. In early July, we're working very hard on getting our marketing materials together and working on the recruitment. So our goal usually is between early July to about the third week of July is when we really want to solidify the students who have signed up to participate in what we call our pre-semester intensive workshops. Those workshops typically take place during the 3 or 4 weeks directly prior to the start of the semester. We figure that gives students enough time to hear about who we are and commit to getting involved in our pre-semester workshops while still being early enough that they can hear about all the important early fall events and opportunities that we want to share with them. So that is in late July up until mid-August or so that we are actively working with the students in a series of workshops that I'll tell you about. During the actual semester, so from about September to December, that is a portion of the program that we consider optional, but we strongly encourage students to still participate in after doing the pre-semester workshop. That is where they're engaging in a set of career development activities that we impress upon them are really important for them to sort of get a foothold in their career development during their first semester at Baruch. And then around December is when we put out a call for applications for our stipends. So I'll tell you more about our stipends, but that is an aspect of the program that we were fortunate enough to be able to include given the funding that we received. We really wanted to be able to help students for whom finances might be a barrier, who could use some additional money as they went off to do an internship or professional development opportunity. So we really do the same thing in the spring, just switching the months a little bit. So for the spring, it's slightly trickier because the winter semester is so much shorter. We're talking about really just like a 3 or 4 week period. But basically, we do it all over again, but our timeline is usually early December is when we get that list of incoming transfer students from the Office of Enrollment Management. Late December to early January is when we're trying to market and recruit. Always tough because it falls during the holidays, but it's important that we get out get out our information at that time because the winter intersession is so compressed. January then is when we are doing our pre-semester intensive workshops, our 3 weeks of workshops for the new students. The spring semester usually starts around the last week of January. So really right after the new year is when we need to prioritize hosting our 3 weeks of pre-semester intensive workshops. Then for the semester portion, we're talking February to May for the spring, is when the students are engaging in their series of career development activities that we encourage them to do. And May is when we put out our call for applications for stipends. So I'll tell you a little bit more about our pre-semester intensive. We conceived it as a series of 3 workshops, each one with a different overarching topic, all designed to help the students understand right off the bat who we are, what are our timelines, and what do they need to know to start the semester off on the right foot, as opposed to having to play catch up and not really learning about who we are until October or so. So again, they're held for 3 weeks, directly prior to the beginning of the fall semester, and then again prior to the spring semester. We hold the workshops in cohorts, meaning that we may have, a Monday 10 o'clock workshop for 3 weeks in a row, and then a Tuesday 5 o'clock workshop, and then a Wednesday 4 o'clock workshop, because we want to enable as many students as possible to participate in these workshops. So we wouldn't want to have it just in one day and time. And our transfer students are busy. They're balancing a lot of different things. Many of them work during the summer. And so we set a range of days and times in the hopes that all of them who were interested could select and participate in one of those days and times. So again, the series of 3 workshops, we tend to focus the first workshop as more of an orientation to who we are, who STAR is, and what are these fall recruiting deadlines and timelines that we want them to know about, so that they're not finding out about them in September. Our big fairs for the fall semester typically happen on the 2nd week of class, and then maybe the 3rd or 4th week of class. So for a student who's coming in brand new and very distracted, just trying to settle into their new school, settle in with their classes, it's very easy for them not to be aware of all of the career development activities that are already happening the moment they set foot on campus. Also, a lot of our employers post their opportunities for fall recruiting in August. And so it would be a disadvantage for them not to even know about those opportunities until September. So session 1 is really about, this is how we can service you. These are all of the benefits you can receive if you are engaged with STAR Career Development Center. And these are the dates we really want you to know about so that you have time to prepare for them. The second session is usually like a resume or cover letter deep dive. We want the students to have, we want to at least leave them with the general guidelines for what can help their resume be neat and readable and competitive, especially in advance of the career fairs that happen in September. And then session 3, we actually changed this up a little bit, but in the past year, that's really when we really prioritize the students knowing and understanding the NACE career competencies. And so we really centered this session around educating them on what those are and how they might talk about them, and helping them brainstorm the ones that they're already engaging in and how they might explain those to employers, while also giving them sort of a bird's eye into what they might expect from an employer event like a career fair or like an information session, and how they might network effectively there. So in addition to the 3 workshops, there are perks, I would say, that the incoming transfer students who participate in those workshops get to enjoy. One of them is that we strongly invite and encourage them to complete our online tutorial for the on-campus recruiting program. Now, a student who was coming in as a new transfer student wouldn't know about this workshop until the first day of class at the earliest. So the fact that they are with us in July and August, and that they can hear about this and we give them the permission to complete that, means that they can start applying for some of those OCR positions in August, which is really, really valuable. A huge benefit, I would say, is the fact that any incoming transfer student who participates in our pre-semester workshops gets early access to our career management system, which we call Star Search. Typically, this is the way it functions at Baruch. It might be different at different schools, but at Baruch, incoming transfer students typically do not have access to our system until the 2nd week of class. And that's like a procedural thing. We have to wait on information that we get from the registrar's office. And so there's a little bit of a waiting game for the incoming transfers. They always have access before the first fair, but it's rarely at the top of the start of class. However, when they participate in our program and we know that they are coming to Baruch, we open up the system for them. So again, that is 3 weeks to a full month early that they're able to log on to Star Search, upload a resume, and apply to opportunities in the system. And then another thing that we offer the students who do our 3 pre-semester intensive workshops is we have arranged for them to get resume back right away. So typically the center, we wouldn't necessarily service students who are not officially Baruch students yet, and we would consider them officially Baruch students once they go to their first class. But when they spend 3 weeks with us, and if they have access to our system and they're going to be applying for opportunities, we want them to be as prepared as possible right away. And so the way we organized the resume feedback is we offered, I believe we changed it a few times, but our last iteration, we offered 1 hour directly prior to a workshop and 1 hour after a workshop for the students who attend the workshop to bring a hard copy of their resume and get feedback on it right then and there. It meant that they wouldn't have to come on a separate day. We do hold walk-in hours in the summer, but they don't necessarily align with the days and times that we do the workshops for the incoming transfer students. So we just try to bring the resume review process to them. They're all in a room. We say, who's got your resume and who wants some feedback on it. Doing this has been really effective. It's really helped the students be ready earlier and able to show their best self earlier. It also does take a lot of staff resources. So it's the sort of thing where we ask the wider staff to commit to a certain number of resume walk-in hours before and after these various workshops so that we can make sure that the students are representing themselves in the best way and also representing STAR in the best way. Okay, so after our 3 pre-semester workshops, really we tell them about this during the last workshop, we invite them to continue with us. So continuing with us looks like this. We identify a series of career development activities that we really encourage the students to engage in over the course of a semester. Now this changed a little bit in that this portion was always considered optional. You know, at the end of the 3rd session, we have the students write down or write on a piece of paper whether they'd like to officially continue their B2B experience into the fall or into the spring. And for those who do, we say, here are all of the activities that we really want you to engage in on your own time, find what works for your schedule. But we would hope that every single one of you could manage to do these activities or as many as possible through the course of the semester. The first year we ran the program, in addition to having this list of suggested activities, we also offered a monthly group advisement session for the students. And that was an interesting experience because we really wanted to still have some connected and sort of structured interfacing with the students that we saw over the summer. And so we offered a range of days and times in the course of a month where we would invite these students to come back and just check in with us. Come to one of the monthly advisement sessions and tell us how it's going. Tell us if you've gone to an employer event. Tell us if you've done a LinkedIn profile. What questions can we answer for you? And what we found is that while the students were absolutely captivated and we had great attendance at the pre-semester workshops, whether in the summer or in the winter, it was harder to get them through the door for the structured monthly advisement sessions. And I think that was just a result of us realizing that once the transfer students are on campus and acclimating to their classes, and maybe they're also figuring out their balance of going to class and juggling their full or part-time job, it was hard for them to manage. It was hard for them to necessarily commit to coming to see us at a specific day and time each month. And so, we took that information and we did not want to discourage students from still engaging heavily in the activities that we thought would be really beneficial for them. So we took away the monthly advisement component, but we replaced it with just a general sort of encouragement to come see us on your own time. Come sign up for a career advisement session with someone if you need one. Come to one of our walk-in sessions, come to our fairs. And it seemed to work better to allow the students to sort of create their own schedule and when they wanted to see us during the fall. I'll just tell you briefly, I'll just go over briefly some of the activities that we came up with. We really thought about what are all the things that could really help a student's first semester at Baruch be full from a career development standpoint. And while some students do all of these, some do just some, and that's okay. But we wanted the students to have an idea of some of the things they could engage in. So one was definitely getting the resume and cover letter review. That's just like standard that really we told them that's like probably the most important thing you can do. Another thing is we encourage students to come for a career advisement session or a workshop, an educational workshop at STAR. We hold a variety of workshops, as I'm sure many career centers do in colleges. So whether they needed help on LinkedIn or networking or interviewing, we encourage them to either meet one-on-one with someone or come to a workshop. We also really encourage them, we made one of the suggested activities attending a STAR employer event on campus. We hold so many and in different formats. We have career fairs, we have corporate information sessions, we have panel events. And so we encourage the students to prioritize going to one of those to get more in the habit of interacting and interfacing with employers and being able to share who they were and what it is they wanted to do. Completing a LinkedIn profile was one of our suggested activities because, as you know, many people watching this know, LinkedIn has become such an important tool when it comes to just lifelong, really, management of career management and job searching. We encourage students to utilize one of our electronic tools on Star Search, which is our mock interview module. That tool allows a student to practice interviewing skills in the comfort of their own home or wherever they are. A tool where you know, there are pre-recorded interview questions and an opportunity to record yourself doing an interview and either watching yourself to give yourself feedback or sharing it with a friend. And we've all come to realize even more the importance of that particular tool, given that so much of our work is virtual now and students can expect to, you know, undergo interviews online. Joining a campus club or professional association was a recommendation of ours. Baruch has a pretty thriving, you know, campus life in that there are many student organizations that are professionally oriented. And so, you know, an accounting student joining the Accounting Society could really benefit a lot from the different networking opportunities and events that a club like that holds. But not every student has the time or the ability to devote more time on campus for events, especially if you are also balancing work. So we said a campus club or even an outside professional association, one that you could engage in as much or as little as you want on your own time. We suggested that one of the activities be conducting an informational interview. And students often need a little bit of guidance about who could be a subject for an informational interview, but we'd let students know that they should look at people like a professor, you know, a former supervisor or manager, a friend of a friend, someone who might be able to share something with them about the field that they're interested in going into. We have another electronic tool at our disposal on Star Search. It's called Focus 2, which is a series of, it's a career and education management tool. And in particular, we wanted the students to really consider utilizing the self-assessment portion just so that they could answer for themselves if they were having any questions about what kind of major or career they wanted to focus on and what is the relationship between who they are and what their preferences are and what their interests are and the various jobs and career fields that are out there. The last two are workshops that we set up as really special opportunities for Bridge to Baruch students. And these workshops centered around the partnerships that we formed with an employer and a faculty member for each year that we've done Bridge to Baruch. So one was a communications workshop led by a Bridge to Baruch faculty partner who I'll talk more about. And the other was an experiential learning workshop conducted by an employer partner. And I'll speak more about those in a minute. Okay, so this slide is really to sort of illustrate how we, as Ellen mentioned, how we have been trying to more intentionally weave in the NACE career competencies into our program. So I also think that making it explicit for the students helps get more buy-in for them in terms of like, well, why should I do these things? You know, why should I join a club on campus? You know, why should I complete a LinkedIn profile? We tried to help them understand how it can directly relate to those core competencies that employers will be asking them about and expecting them to be able to articulate in an interview. So here's the list of activities once again, and this is how we conceive the activities as being related to the NACE career competencies. So you'll see that some of them are career management. Something like LinkedIn and Focus 2 would really help a student with the digital technology competency. Joining a campus club would relate to teamwork and collaboration. as well as global intercultural fluency, in that they would be working closely with students of different backgrounds. The communications workshop by the faculty member was really designed to be centered around communication and helping the students think about their communication styles and how they might improve it. And the employer partner workshop was conceived to tap more into critical thinking skills, teamwork, and global intercultural fluency. So a few other elements of the program that I wanted to mention. I mentioned earlier stipends, and so we were really fortunate to receive funding that would allow us to give some of that money back to the students. And so at the end of the academic year, we set aside a certain amount of money for multiple stipends of $500 each that we want to share, that we want to give back to the students who might benefit from it. Our management of this portion of the program has changed a little bit. I will say that in the first year, our requirements were that students, anybody could apply, but the priority for awarding the stipends was given to students who could demonstrate having engaged in a lot of the career development activities that we had suggested for the course of the semester. So their activity level in different career events was a factor, as well as having received an offer for an internship. And our thought was that students going off to an internship probably could use that $500, whether it was for bumping up their wardrobe, whether it was for commuting or lunch or anything along those lines. We wanted them to be able to start their experience off on a strong note. We started adjusting that a bit, in that particularly this past year, when we think about COVID-19 and the fact that we were all forced off of our campuses in mid-March. And so for this past year, we really thought about what would be important for the students, what they would need. And so we did not want it to just be students who were fortunate enough to get an internship, because sadly, many students were cut off from that opportunity because of the global pandemic and because of the way it cut into recruiting, and it might have, a lot of students might have just been hurting financially anyway because of the pandemic. So we wanted to then change that requirement to our priority would be to award the stipends to students who either had an internship offer or had a planned professional development activity that they could describe to us for which the funds would be helpful. So for example, if a student wanted to engage in some online training to learn new technical tools, or if a student were going to attend a virtual conference and wanted to utilize the funds for that. So we absolutely had to make some adjustments, of course, as I'm sure everyone did, given the public health concerns. In addition, we did not hold students so hard to the requirement of having completed all or most of the career development activities that we specified, simply because students were cut off from accessing a lot of those events once we were forced off campus. So we really wanted to consider the student, what they had going on, what they were hoping to utilize the funds for, and also who really needed the funds at this time. Another portion of the program that I haven't mentioned yet is that we conceived the opportunity for students who were in Bridge to Baruch to be able to be in some sort of mentorship or leadership role in some way. So we've tossed around a lot like what that might look like. We thought about whether we might deploy some Bridge to Baruch students to go back to their former community colleges and talk to students about, opportunities at Baruch. We've thought about having students come, as guest speakers to some of the pre-semester workshops to talk to the incoming transfers about their experience with doing Bridge to Baruch before and how it benefited them. So we've been able to tap into some of our Bridge to Baruch students for a few opportunities. I know that I can tell you that we held a panel event for Bridge to Baruch. I think this was the second semester of Bridge to Baruch, where we were able to recruit Bridge to Baruch participants from the first semester to come and speak on a panel to sort of inspire and motivate and share their experiences with the new transfers from that semester. And so that's an aspect of the program that we hope to flesh out a little bit more, but it really mostly speaks to the fact that we don't want to totally lose touch with our students. We want to be able to, we hope to tap into them to to utilize their experiences and their wisdom and their knowledge and encourage them to give back in some way to the upcoming students. I'll talk briefly just about the two partnerships that I mentioned. One was the faculty partnership, and this was where we partnered with a faculty member who would hold a special event aimed at Bridge to Baruch students. We did open the event to the wider student body, but it was particularly marketed towards and encouraged for the Bridge to Baruch students. So for the first year, we were able to partner with one of the accounting professors at Baruch named Professor Stephen Melnick. An interesting part of his background is that he was also a transfer student, and so part of his talk was largely motivational and sort of like helping the students understand and see the ways that they could be successful. And he was able to tap into his own personal story as well and sharing with the students. And the feedback on that session was really positive. And in this past year, we were really fortunate to have Professor Denise Patrick, who in addition to being an amazing communications professor, is also a little bit of a rock star on campus. All the students love her. She's an easy draw. And so the students were excited to go see Professor Patrick speak. And her specialty area really is leadership and communication. And so her presentation was really to help the students understand the importance of cultivating those skills and helping them gauge where they are now and where they could go. In terms of our partnership with an employer, the first year our employer partnership wasn't necessarily, it wasn't written in stone, but we got the idea in the middle of the year that we would really love to tap into one of our favorite employers on campus who we thought might really like working with this particular population. So Enterprise Holdings, I believe, is still the #1 employer of college students in the nation. But they also have a management training program for which they really specifically look at people going into their, they like to look at juniors. And so that lines up really well with our typical transfer student. They usually do come in as either sophomores or juniors. And so we thought it might be a good opportunity for our representative from Enterprise to get to know some of these students and for these students to know about this great opportunity that Enterprise has for students in their year. So the first year was an internship presented by Deborah Fisher of Enterprise Holdings, talking about, really just breaking down the internship experience and how students might really best prepare for that. And in this past year, we were very sad that we couldn't actually bring our workshop to fruition because of COVID-19. It was interrupted. But we were planning to do some sort of experiential workshop combined with a case competition for the students by Enterprise that would help them tap into some collaborative skills as well as critical thinking and problem solving. So hopefully that is a kind of workshop that we can try implementing in the future. And now I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Sandy, who will talk a bit about our marketing and recruitment efforts for the program.
Thank you, Adia, for the handoff. So my name is Sandy Cooprat, as Adia said, and so I'm going to talk with you about marketing. And I think one of the reasons why Bridge to Baruch was so successful was because of the marketing campaign that we had and this level of support that we had within the Storer Career Development Center. So we had in-house marketing interns create the logo and the brand for Bridge to Baruch. And so this design that we have right here is what they came up with, which I think is pretty nifty looking. I thought it was very modern. And so I think this was very eye-catching and it was appealing. And this was all homegrown marketing that we utilized here. So we used a tool called Constant Contact, which was how we maintain communication with our invitees and our participants. One of the things that makes Constant Contact a great tool is that it allows us to send customized emails with the student's first name in it as a way, because research has shown that if someone has their name in an email, they're more likely to open it up. It seems more personal. So an example, some of our message were similar to this, which is like, Mary, don't miss out on the opportunity to join Baruch's exclusive program for incoming transfer students. And so by seeing their name, they get excited. Also, actually, I'm just going to one more thing as well. Constant Contact, one of the really, really nice things about it as well is that you get the metrics on the back end of it that lets us know what was the open rate, and so we get that type of information, which is helpful. Even too, I think we got to learn what was the best time of day to send out communications. So we found that midday, noon was the best time for us to send out communications, because if you send something in the morning or send an email at night, it's less likely to be opened. Okay, so as far as marketing, those are just some of the things that we had done. As far as recruitment, we had to engage with our enrollment management folks to obtain a list of incoming transfer students. We also shared program highlights within Baruch and the larger CUNY system to increase awareness of the program. So from talking at these CUNY-wide events, we were able to let people know and kind of generate some excitement about the program, as well as talking about that within Baruch. People were excited, and the buzz after we talked about the results, people were talking about how successful this was and how they wanted their students and transfer students wanted to get into the program as well. So part of it was generate our own internal and external marketing. So we used Constant Contact, which was used for the email, as I talked about earlier. We sent out the initial invite at around 1 to 1.5 months prior to the program's start to kind of give them time to respond. Also too, sometimes people don't respond to the first email. So we also have like second and third email reminders closer to the deadline date to just remind them like, hey, this is, the deadline's coming up. And so this was a very successful email campaign that we had. We also on the back end use Qualtrics as a way to manage the program registration and the workshop selection process. So this just kind of had everything located in one place, so that it made organizing it easier and helped managing the logistics a little bit easier. Measurements and outcomes. So, one of the big pushes at Baruch is to measure and assess all along the way, all along the process. So we were measuring and assessing our successes of our marketing and engagement. So we were looking at the email open rates through the Constant Contact metric. We were looking at program enrollment and attendance as aspects to our success. We had post-workshop assessments of learning objectives, which was paper and pencil. We even had a resume rubric that was used to evaluate the before and after program quality of their resumes before and after the program. So at baseline, we had students submit their resume. And then what we did is after the program, we said, please submit your revised version of your resume after you've gotten the feedback. And then we rated it to see, did it get better? Did it get better? And so the rubric that we used was adapted from Amherst College's rubric. It was paper and pencil, and we had 2 to 3 people on the review team. So if there was more than a 2-point difference between the 2 reviewers, we had a third person kind of break the tie and figure out which was the more, which was the more accurate score, so to speak. All right, so we also did some system reporting to compare transfer students to non-transfer students, non-Bridge to Baruch transfer students. And this was a system generated report from Simplicity. And that was very helpful as well to see is our goal was to increase engagement of our transfer students. And this was just a way to see if that happened. We also had the end of semester survey of internship engagement. So it was a Qualtrics survey, and we just asked them at the end of the semester, did you obtain an internship? And because ultimately, all these other things are lovely as well, but truly the big goal is we want them to be getting internships and jobs. And so at the end, we did a Qualtrics survey asking them that. And then we also asked feedback about different aspects of the program so that we can improve and learn from the feedback that we received along the way from the students themselves. So these are some of our outcomes that we're really proud of. So as far as the email open rate, on average, the average in the industry the average open rate of an email is about 30%. And so with the Bridge to Baruch emails, our communications had a 60 to 80% open rate, which was pretty good. And so I think some of that excitement was, you know, the stipend was, while we will talk about that a little bit later, while it wasn't the main incentive for them to being a part of Bridge to Baruch, I think it helped them open emails like, what, $500? That's great to have a stipend. But, and even to just the program itself, the thought of engaging with prestigious employers was another enticement for them. And so I think by seeing those types of things, that the open rate was a little bit higher, and seeing their name, of course. The Bridge to Baruch enrollment rate. So on average, I mean, we've had our bridge, if we look at this table here on the screen here, so the Bridge to Baruch B2B invitations, you know, we have incoming transfer students anywhere from 1,100 students to about 2,000 students every semester are coming in as transfer students. And so we had a 21 to 29% enrollment rate. So of those students, that 21 to 29 signed up for Bridge to Baruch. Other similar, not similar programs, it was another program and orientation for transfer students. And we were told that, you know, God, we can't get anybody to sign up for this. Only 6% of our students, of our transfer students, sign up for this orientation. But the fact that we got 21 to 29% really spoke volumes to, I think, the messaging that we had used in our program. And then ultimately, so a lot of people sign up, but I think as probably a lot of you know, when we have workshops, there's how many sign up and then there's how many actually show up. So our attendance rate, so of those who enrolled but actually showed up at the workshop, 44 to 65% actually attended our sessions. And this is just a table of our engagement here. All right, so as far as learning outcomes, you know, what did the students learn? Did they learn in our workshops? 95% of the students demonstrated understanding of workshop content. And this was on subjects such as resumes, cover letters, networking, LinkedIn, job search strategies. And Bridge to Baruch students on average had about 2.25 resume reviews over the span of a semester, which is pretty good, considering that most do not. They have less than, I think it was less than one on average for the non-Bridge to Baruch students. As far as resume, using the resume rubric, our data shows that the average resume score increased. So when we rated those pre-Bridge to Baruch resume scores on a range of 0 to 18, the average pre-score was a 12.35, but the average post-program score was 15.74. So that was it. The score on those resumes went up. So that shows that there was improvement. All right, so also using the systems data, we found that Bridge to Baruch students logged on 9 times as compared to the non-Bridge to Baruch students who logged on about approximately 1 time on average. They also, Bridge to Baruch students applied to significantly more to on-campus employment opportunities. And so on this particular chart, the reason why I have the little circle around these events right here. So when you're looking at it in engagement rate, so definitely Bridge to Baruch has a higher engagement rate. Their average event per student is definitely higher. You know, but when you look at one event, you could see that, all right, maybe the non-Bridge to Baruch, they had 71%. But then when you start looking at the higher levels of engagement, so meaning who attended 2, 3, 4, 5 events, you can see that the Bridge to Baruch definitely is skewing a little bit higher, showing more engagement in our programs and events, which is what we want. That is the goal of the program, is increased engagement. All right, so as far as takeaways and future directions, I'm going to go talk about that next. One of the biggest takeaways is customizing emails with the student's name. It increases the open rate. So if you want people to come to your program, put their name in the email. It's helpful. This pre-semester engagement is key. What it does is it captures them at a time when they are so excited to go to this new school. You know, they're excited, they're eager, they want to do this type of thing. They're thinking about their careers. So it's also at this time before the semester where we're informing them of the key recruitment deadlines, events, and processes, meaning all the things that I have to do right at semester start is important, so that they don't miss those opportunities. It also, the pre-semester was part of creating a sense of community, connection, and identity. We had events later on in the program where the Bridge to Baruch students kind of like sought each other out, like, hey, that's a Bridge to Baruch student. So that was kind of a fun thing as well, was kind of seeing how they connected with one another. So the pre-semester got them engaged with earlier with the Career Center, and they were not early in the semester, they're not distracted by their studies yet. I assure you that during midterms and finals, they are not coming to see us. And our data showed that. We tried, we really did. We wanted them to come in and see us all throughout the semester, but midterms and finals ultimately come priority, and we become less important as the semester goes on. The other big thing, we did a focus group. We talked to our students and we said, hey, with the stipend, was that a key motivator for why you joined Bridge to Baruch? And it wasn't. They were more concerned about future career opportunities, being able to make a good impression, and those types of other things. So the stipend was just like a minor thing. And it kind of was minor compared to all the other benefits that they received. So, other takeaways, we are thinking about, the early access to the career management system was definitely an incentive that you could consider. Be part of Bridge to Baruch and get early access to the career management system, have access to prestigious employers as an incentive. And what we did in our session was we required attendance at the first session before we gave them access to the system. So it was more like a security like a checks and balances from a system security thing to only include students that are actually enrolled in the program. So that's why we did that required attendance at the first session. Another takeaway is you need to be comfortable with the fact that there is going to be a lot of attrition from each stage of this program, and that's okay. I think it's just a natural part of the semester, is that in the beginning, there's lots of enthusiasm. After each workshop, there's a little bit more drop off, and so, 20% sign up, 50% show up to the first session, and then there's a little bit of attrition with each of the workshops going forward. All right, and so for me, I think this is one of the biggest takeaways is the resume reviews before and after the workshop. I mean, you have a captive audience. They are more likely to come and have their resume reviewed if it's easy. If there is a resume review session before or after their workshop, they're more likely to make one of those and more likely to have a professional take a look at this so that they are able to make a good impression when it is time for them to go in front of employers and apply to jobs. As Adia mentioned earlier, have multiple career counselors. I think we called like the resume SWAT team would come and do these resume reviews. And that's what it felt like, because we would do probably about, 5 to 6 resumes during that hour each, so it was, it was a lot of that, but it was fun. It's a big team thing. And what we also learned from this is that we had scheduled resume walk-in hours, or for our Bridge to Baruch students, that was special for them, but there was very little uptake. And so I think for us, our biggest takeaway is that if we have special, walk-in hours for them, that's not as popular. That's more difficult. It's not convenient, but the before and after, that works. Additionally, we invited other departments and programs that benefit that transfer students could benefit from, to give an introduction about their services and things like that. And so we've received feedback that as a result of coming to our Bridge to Baruch sessions, they gained access to students and talent that they did not have in the past, which I thought was wonderful, so, good cross collaboration or cross selling, of other programs and services that we have at the school. All right, so future directions. So we would like to evaluate the program impact after graduation. So did the students achieve their career goals? Are they, listen, the students are coming, they want to make more money. So did they make more money? What is their salary over time? We would like to continue to engage with them after graduation, to create a sense of community, giving back, that have them for mentoring and those types of opportunities. We would like to consider early access for all incoming transfer students. So, could this be not just for ones for the program, but for everybody? Could that be something for all students as a way to reduce barriers and increase access to quality jobs. And we would like to adapt this program to special populations, such as first-year students, first-generation college students, first-generation Americans, students with disabilities, and international students are some of the special populations. And now I am going to pass the floor to Ellen, who's going to wrap up. You are on mute, Ellen.
There we go. Okay, so like we said at the beginning, this could not be possible without a whole bunch of different supports. So first of all, I want to thank Sandy and Adia for all the work they put into getting a whole group of people to be involved in this initiative. So they were involved in helping with the initial write-up, as was I, and we applied for the CUNY Career Success Initiative grant, and that really enabled us, it accelerated something we already hoped to do. We certainly hope to better serve transfer students, but having this Career Success Initiative grant not only gave us the financial support for the stipends and for the faculty and the employer and the ability to also have a part-time person who was behind the scenes doing with the communications as well. They also gave us, there was a learning community that took place, and we got to participate in that and workshop ideas and get feedback as well. So we are super grateful for the CUNY Career Services Initiative that really helped us accelerate this initiative. And as we mentioned at the very beginning, we could not have done it without partnership from our Vice President and Dean of Students, Vice President for Enrollment Management, the Director and the team of the new Student and Family Programs, the Office of Sponsored Programs that helped us with the financial back end of things, our faculty members that supported the program, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and I also want to mention other staff members within STAR that became that team of people that would go do the resume reviews and would see these students when they would come individually or to other workshops. We are also thrilled that our development office helped us to secure a grant so that we continue this into the future with the Carol and Milton Petrie Foundation. So we're really extra excited about that we'll be able to continue it far more. I mean, we would have always found a way to do it, but we would have had to scale back a little bit. So we're really excited about that. And I also want to mention that we were very fortunate to be acknowledged by the Career Services Association of CUNY, which has an annual conference every year, and people can submit their ideas for best practices. And the Bridge to Baruch program actually took away 2 of those awards. One was for cross-campus collaboration, and the other one was for innovative use of technology. And we got to present and share ideas because our overarching goal is hopefully not only to help the students that come to Baruch, but to share these ideas so that they could be replicated within CUNY and also at other colleges and universities. So with that, we would like to thank you for choosing to watch our particular presentation. And we want to invite you to contact Sandy, who can contact the rest of us as well, should you have further questions or have tips or ideas that you may want to share on your end. So on behalf of our team here, thank you so much. And we're glad that you could choose to participate with us.